You're listening to the Ringer NBA show presented by FanDuel. America's #1 sportsbook is the best place to bet on the NBA because not only does FanDuel have all your favorite player props, but now you can even check out stats and recent performance trends right in the app before you make your picks. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today to get in on the action. The Ringer is committed to responsible gaming. Please visit rg-help.com to learn more about the resources and helplines available and listen to the end of the episode for additional details. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. Hello and welcome to the first group chat after dark of the 2025 NBA postseason. I am Justin Verrier. Joining me, my own personal Josh Giddey and Kobe White, Rob Mahoney, Big Waz. Thank you for joining me on this thrilling second night of playing basketball, gentlemen.
Can't we be like Andrew Wiggins and Davion Mitchell instead? Is that on the table?
Better?
Is that better? I'll take certainly tonight. I'll take it.
All four of those guys have hair that I would kill to have.
You with the Josh
age.
Giddey locks would really be something, I gotta say.
Pretty sweet.
Playoff Wiggins is back. Playoff AD sort of back, or at least back enough to beat a sad sack Kings team. We're going to talk about both play-in games. After we do that, you will hear what we recorded earlier today, which is a big ol' playoff preview. Over an hour worth of content. We did the playoff variables. You're goddamn right we did.
Of course.
So stay tuned for that, or I'm sure they'll put the time codes in the podcast so you can jump ahead. But we reconvened at night on Wednesday to talk about some play-in action. Unfortunately, was not the best night of play-in action. I'm starting to wonder, like, every year now, it seems like the second round of the play-in action, the 9-10 matchups, a little lackluster.
You mean you weren't wowed by four teams who won in the 30s this regular season? Your NBA sort of funny bone didn't get tingled with that? No, like I think it's what we expected, right? These are literally the last four teams in the play-in for various reasons. I think the Mavs are probably the most legitimate of this team. Of these teams, I'd say they have the most talent. Like what they do on defense seems the most sustainable, right? But still, no Kyrie Irving, hardly any real backcourt juice. Take a drink at home, those of you listening. And so I'm not surprised, man, with the weak guard play. But Sacramento, I don't know. I thought they would give a bigger fight than this, and it was over pretty quick. They were getting smoked by 24 by halftime.
Neither of these games was particularly interesting for that reason. Neither of them were very close. And frankly, I will say, if you're the Bulls, if you give up 71 points to this Heat team in a half, you just need to go to your room and think about what you've done. Like, why are we here if this is the level of participation that's going to be involved? And so, yeah, the two teams that won, unsurprisingly, are the more polished teams, are the teams that approach this with an actual playoff level focus and energy, for one, which goes a long way when you're playing against Sacramento and Chicago.
Yeah, it's just such a come down coming off of Golden State versus Memphis that had the juice, drink at home yet again, of like
actual
late
playoff game.
Yeah. And so I like that. I do like that the NBA is trying to work in a do or die situation into NBA basketball, because we've just wanted this for a while. It's all series, just having a little bit of spice thrown in there. Not a bad thing. And you could even argue, what's the harm of having a second night of play-in games? Right. Like, it's just abundance, and the NBA clearly is trying to sell volume to its advertisers, to streamers like Amazon and whatnot, as opposed to the NFL that's just trying to be targeted about having great games. But there are diminishing returns to this, as we talked about all season, of maybe like doing a little bit too much that you kind of get people to tune out. And a night like this, I'm like, kind of symbolizes all of that. It's just like, I don't think we would have watched this, or we would have caught up to it later if we weren't obligated to do so. And that's a bad sign.
I think there's the trade-offs of that do make it worth it, though, right? Like, having the play-in to begin with is what made that Clippers-Warriors game as good as it was. And overall, even the ability to like dodge Oklahoma City's matchup, that made the 7-8 matchup all the more important. And so you still do get areas in which this is really going to pop, and there's going to be inevitably matchups, most of which historically involve some combination of the Bulls, the Hawks, the Heat. Like they're just at a revolving door with this stuff. But it's not a coincidence that the good game was the one featuring 248 win teams. The Grizzlies and the Warriors are good, credible NBA enterprises. And I'll say this about the Mavericks, who have had every reason, built-in excuse and otherwise, to fold on this season and just have not done it. They have played hard. They played good, committed basketball. They've been like undermanned and really haven't had a great shot in some of these games down the stretch of the regular season, but they've shown up and played. And so this is what that gets you, is it makes you look a cut above teams that just aren't really built to compete at this sort of level.
And I think the breadth of the regular season is, the level of it is brought up, is raised by having teams compete, one, to stay out of the play-in mix, which obviously that Golden State and Clippers game where it's just like, look, man, we don't want to have to be playing for our playoff lives in the play-in. That matters. And, I think about a year like this one where Memphis as the AC was 7 games better than Sacramento. So they basically would have 8 games, would have been playing to be like, all right, maybe I don't want to be the 8th seed, or I'm cool with being the 7th. But the teams above them would have been taking games off left and right. Under the current paradigm, everybody had skin in the game, and so everybody played really hard. And I think especially the 9s and 10s of both East and Western conferences, those would have been 4 more teams thrown into what is already a disgusting NBA mix during the months of March, late February, really. March.
Wouldn't have gotten the Bulls
April.
Run. Is what you're saying.
I think we might all be better off. Yeah.
Well, here would be the counter. I do think most of the teams in the East play-in were probably in the thick of that, whether they wanted to or not. I don't think they were actively putting their foot on the gas pedal. I think that's just a product of teams. If you're going to put the ball out there, guys are going to play for contracts, for personal pride, all that other stuff. And so I do think, yes, tanking would be slightly worse. I'm not necessarily sure it wasn't any worse with some of those teams. I also think there is the whole Grizzlies problem where they did win 8 more games than the Kings and then 9 more than the Mavs. Is it really like doing them justice to put them in a do or die situation, especially when like one injury to Morant, we'll see on Friday against the Mavs, like could they go home despite having a very good regular season?
I think they could. I don't want to overrate how good this Dallas team is in its current form.
But they can win though, Rob.
They can win, and the Grizzlies have some fluky games, especially when teams really put up a fight. Like, sometimes the Grizzlies just can't get their shit together. That is an empirical thing that is true about their season.
It's been true for 3 years.
It's been true for quite some time. The Mavs, though, are starting Najee Marshall at point guard. They're basically not playing Spencer Dinwiddie at all, which I kind of support, to be honest with you. They have such a funky lineup and orientation and spacing overall that it's good enough to beat the Kings, clearly. It's good enough to beat these like mid-range mavens and to bully, Domantas Sabonis a little bit inside and kind of counteract what he's bringing to the table.
Shots at DeMar DeRozan, mid-range mavens. The disgust that rolled off of your tongue, the alliteration, like, wow.
Well, you should know alliteration is the highest form of flattery for us here at TheRinger.com, Woz. Like, I just think this Kings team is fundamentally flawed, like fundamentally compromised. And so the Mavs running over them is not, to me, representative of the fact that they necessarily will beat the Grizzlies, although they certainly could.
I guess that's the big question here is, do you guys like having more games? Just as a fan, we're not actually gaining anything financially or anything from this. Do you like more games, or would you rather just one game, you get the best of what's possible, maybe like a 7-8 matchup? Like the first year we did the play-in was in the bubble. I think they had a situation where one team had to win 2 games versus the team that had the better record only had to win 1. The Blazers ultimately won that game and they went ahead. Like, what if it was that format versus what we have now? Do you like that any better?
I think if there was a way to give me Friday and yesterday and none of today.
You want the 2 buns, you don't want the sandwich.
Yeah. Just be fine.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah, I don't know what the right answer is. I think I'm just trying to talk it out.
It's one of those things where year to year, it's going to be different. There's going to be some years where there's a really good team in like the 9 spot, right? And it's just going to kind of make sense and it'll lead to a pretty competitive field. And there's going to be years like this. And that's ultimately, I think, okay.
Okay. Well, let's talk about some of these games quickly then. So the Mavs beat the Kings. I assume everything now, Rob, is okay in Dallas. Nico Harrison.
They fixed it, yeah.
Off the hook. Everything's great.
Bro.
Can you even imagine the quotes that are going to come out if the Mavs make the playoffs? Like,
good or bad? Like, what do fans want right now?
I honestly don't know what Mavs fans want. I don't know that they know what they want.
I want them to make the playoffs because it's gonna be funny.
It would be very funny.
And we know Nico Harrison will find a way to poke his chest out about it. But what I noticed first and foremost about the game today is that Nico Harris sat in a seat. On the
Certainly
road.
did. Not in the tunnel, you're saying?
He wasn't standing in the tunnel surrounded by security.
Interesting.
On the road, he's actually able to sit down and take in a basketball game. It's freaking crazy. The level of vitriol for this guy right now.
Listen, I feel for Mavs fans. They have probably invested so much time, so much emotional bandwidth, so much money in this team to have it ripped away from you. I get it. You guys should express all of your concerns and your vitriol, anything you want to do. It's totally warranted. I'm not trying to take that away from you. I'm getting a little worried about Nico Harrison. Like, it's like getting a little troubling out there. I'm starting to feel bad for him, even though he did this to himself.
Well, I mean, you just gotta, if you're gonna message, you gotta message better. And there was a report from Shams tonight that apparently the kind of on the record, but at first you weren't allowed to record it, but then they caved and you are allowed to record it. Closed door, invite only, roundtable press conference that Nico Harrison and Rick Welts held was actually at the behest, apparently, of Patrick Dumont. That was not a Nico Harrison idea. This was, you need to go sit in front of these people and try to control the message. And I'm going to tell you, he did not do it very effectively. Would the message change, though, if the Mavs do make the playoffs, right? I think clearly you are starting to see some of what Nico Harrison is proposing as a real thing. He has said, like, oh, there were 2 quarters of evidence that we were a really high-level team. 2.5
quarters.
2.5 quarters before everything went to shit. Honestly, it was a great half. I'm not trying to take it away from anybody. Them making the playoffs will be a real thing. And I think what sucks about this Mavs team is they are, in their way, fun. Like, this is a fun team to watch, even in their weird form. Like, Anthony Davis
is a fun player to watch.
Oh, always. Daniel Gafford, always fun to watch.
So physical, man.
I love the Dante Exum experience. We got a really good Klay Thompson game today and a really good PJ Washington game at the same time. That's always a good bellwether for the Mavs. But
Klay able to marooned on this team that he thought was going to be his answer to like get back at the Warriors is this honestly low-key the saddest part.
Crazy.
It's tough.
And so him having this big game, like, I love that. That was great.
Yeah, and he's maybe the player most of all on this team who is reliant on, if not Luka level playmaking, at least Kyrie Irving level playmaking. And so he's finding other ways to engage as a cutter, to create his shots. Like, I thought this was a really good Klay game.
He turned down more money with the Lakers because he was like, look, it's pretty dysfunctional in LA. That was one of the reasoning. And his dad was obviously a Laker guy, selling him on the Lakers. He's like, look, it's kind of dysfunctional over there. Plus, the Mavs went to the finals last year. Like, they're adding me to a finals team, plus more pieces. Like, we've got this young superstar in Luka Doncic who's got a proven playoff track record.
Yeah. Well, let's be real. Even if he had done that, he just would have gotten traded to the Mavericks in the Luka deal anyway. Like, it was always going to end this way for Klay one way or the other.
Probably true. I do like the Brandon Williams little pop here toward the end. Anytime a guy is like a journeyman, been on 4 different teams, all of a sudden catches some win, like break stride, whatever euphemism you want to throw out there, like, that's a good story. That's a nice little story that no one's going to care about, but I appreciate what he's doing.
I just think they have a lot of guys who are charismatic basketball players who are, a little miscast in the roles that they're asked of what they're asked to do now. But even getting to see Anthony Davis try new stuff and experiment a little bit and like run some inverted pick and roll, like that's fun basketball stuff.
Again, it bears mentioning to say they had a sick team.
They did,
and they broke it up. And another thing, just one last thing: a healthy Kyrie Irving. This is not a championship team.
It'd be a good one, though.
They would have been solid.
Yes. A good team.
I still contend that. And I also think, like, you need a power forward on the open market next offseason. You're calling the Mavs because they have 20 of them. Let me tell you.
Yes.
Well, one of them is Anthony Davis, apparently. You know, like, that's just how they want to live.
That's the worst part of it. Oh, God. I keep finding 9 different worst parts as we're going through this conversation. Why don't we flip maybe to the future here? Do you think that these guys have a shot against Memphis. We don't, as we're recording this Wednesday night, really know what the health status of John Morant is. I assume he's going to probably give it a go just because he is kind of a baller and, he plays through a lot of different things. Let's assume that he might be diminished for this conversation. Do you think like the Mavs can pull this off? What do you think, Rob?
Could, yes. Will, probably not. I just don't see it was a 44-point second quarter for them in this game against the Kings. Sacramento just had no point of attack defense whatsoever against a team that really can't handle the ball. And so even a Memphis team without Jalen Wells, even a Memphis team that we'll see what condition John Morant is in, they have guys and they have a functional defense and they know how to rotate. I think they're just a little bit more tied together than what the Sacramento team is right now. They got Zach Edey. They got one of the best defensive players in the league in Jaren Jackson Jr. They got Scottie Pippen Jr., who's just coming off of, I thought, a pretty solid performance against Golden State with a pretty tall order chasing Steph around. They've got a lot of guys who are going to engage defensively in a very different way from what you saw from the Kings.
Here's what I'll say. The other night, I watched Golden State play the Spurs in a game they absolutely had to have, played reasonably hard, and lost.
Yeah.
The Spurs, okay? Granted, there's a buzzer beater, Harry Barnes, all kinds of things had to happen, but they lost to the Spurs in a game they absolutely needed. I think this Mavs team is better than the Spurs. The freaking Warriors just barely beat Memphis, and Memphis's best player is hobbled at the moment. So it's not out of the question that they could lose this game on Friday. There's some actual doubt as to what the outcome would be.
All right, flipping to the East now. I think I speak for all of us on this show when I say, can we get Josh Giddey some help? God damn. How about we get a credible defense to go around this budding superstar in our league?
You have never once spoken for us, and you certainly won't be doing it now, Justin. But what do you have to say for yourself as Josh Giddey believer, as Chicago Bulls believer?
Josh Giddey apologist.
Yeah, definitely apologist.
I don't think this was the best Bulls performance of the season, let alone of the second half. I don't think that Giddey is one of the first 10 problems of this game. I thought he was pretty mediocre in certain aspects. He just couldn't get a floater going. The defense is always kind of shaky with him. That's not really his role. He just has to be big, and you just have to put him on someone in order to cover him. It would be nice if he dribbled a little tighter as a point guard. That's
sure.
That'd be great. But I don't think he was the problem. I do think long term, if we're looking at the Bulls, I think Giddey White is a lot of juice for your offense. Bazelis, a nice prospect that I think very highly of. You just need to round it out with some defense. Vooch, at this stage of his career, I get what you're doing with the 5 out. You needed somebody on the back line. You need an Alex Sarr type who could play in space, but also protect the rim. You need to figure out the 4-5 spots because you need someone to cover for these guys.
But they would never go for an Alex Sarr type because he's too young. And this is a team that's ready to run now and ready to compete, Chicago Bulls style, playing in the play-in tournament every single year.
They'll never have the high picks, unfortunately, to draft a Alex Sarr. That's the problem.
Unbelievable.
They could if they wanted to. They could if they wanted to. I just think it's kind of sobering when the Bulls are a team that in their own way are trying to compete for something. I'm not saying they're a championship contender, but this is a team that even after the Zach LaVine trade was trying to win games. You get into a must-win game and you run into Andrew Wiggins and realize that he is a different class of competitor than anyone on your roster. That feels like a pretty big problem.
Hey, everyone want to talk about
play. I think I killed Was.
Listen, Andrew Wiggins is a different level of competitor.
Is that not what we just watched?
Playoff Wiggins. Everyone talking about playoff Jimmy. What about playoff Wiggins?
Oh my God. Tyler Hero started 8 for 8 in this game.
Yep.
That was
8 for 8. Yeah. This wasn't all layups.
Anything he wanted.
Just basically practice shots against these dudes.
Let me ask you this, Waz, and we can go out on this maybe. Would you rather be the Bulls going forward or Zach LaVine's new team, the Sacramento Kings? Who has it worse, I think, is the question.
The Bulls, I think, have a little bit more clarity to their team because the people they're counting on are younger than DeRozan and LaVine and even Sabonis, right? So there's a little bit more clarity in terms of this is a youth movement now. And that's what we're going to pursue. Whereas Sacramento, they're going to go into next offseason, we need to build on top of this. And it's You're paying Sabonis $50 million. Like,
And he might not want to be there.
Might not want to be there. I mean, look, this isn't quite Iman Shumpert demanding a trade from the Cavs at the end there, where I invented the Iman Shumpert rule. You can't demand a trade unless there's demand out there for you. So, like, that's a rule. Like,
we got to use that.
Like, Sabonis, you could demand a trade, but, like, you're not in demand.
But he's also not Iman Shumpert. There's
No. He's not Iman Shumpert.
Levels of difference to what we're talking about here.
Iman Shumpert was kind of delusional. No, he was very delusional for that demand. But, like, what do they really do if they're not willing to move on from the vets?
I think if they were willing to take an actual moment of honest introspection and look in the mirror and say, where are we and how far do we need to go to actually contend? If they did that, the Sacramento Kings, they would tear it all down. But they're not going to do that. They're going to tinker around the edges. If a player wants out, they're going to trade that player, and they're going to try to bring in somebody a la Zach LaVine for De'Aaron Fox, who's going to contribute to the team now, and they're going to keep these wheels spinning as long as they can possibly spin. Not a very good way to run a team, but I think it's what they're going to do.
I, for one, cannot wait to see what Vlade does with this roster. So we'll see. All right, stay tuned. After this short break, you will hear an hour plus of playoff nonsense. So strap in there. But thank you to Isaiah Blakely. We'll talk to you next time. All right, we're back broadcasting from the past. A much simpler time before Nico Harrison has done anything in this day that has drawn the ire of Mavericks fans. I feel like every time I look up, he's doing something. He breathes their clean air, and everyone is piling on him.
Well, I think some of the pile on is deserved. It's a new day. 100%. It's a brand new opportunity to embarrass yourself and your franchise. So you got to seize it.
That guy, I've never seen a bigger sports pariah in my lifetime. It's so bad right now, but we'll have more of that obviously at the top of the show. We're going big picture for this segment. We're talking about the playoffs in totality. Those start this weekend, and we are bringing you yet again the playoff variables. Everyone's favorite segment, especially Rob, who still doesn't understand how it's spelled or pronounced.
I will say your spelling in your messages about this one, to me, were a completely new variation on variable spelling.
Can I tell you how I spelt it?
Please.
Verrier.
Yeah.
The Verrier. BLES.
See, that would make sense, but that's not what we're doing.
Oh, so no A.
I feel like if you're going to do A, it needs to be Verrierables, Verria, or Verrierables, but not Verrierables.
Verrierables.
That doesn't make sense.
That's what the Verrierables.
You bring up some good points that I hadn't considered. This was just stream of consciousness how I wrote it down, which actually I think is different than how I wrote it down the first time we did this. And then we had this discussion and I changed it to this, but apparently I went to a different extreme.
I like that it has a life of its own, that organically over time takes new spelling, new pronunciation, new bits. We're trying to evolve here.
We're all evolving, and so is the variables. And for that reason, we bring to you our new hit jam in order to kick things off. And so Isaiah, can you hit us with the song for the 2025 playoff variables?
I feel like you're about to freestyle for Sway. What's going on?
For Sway. I think I was Googling trap beats, like free trap beats for a while, but I don't think this is what that came out as. It's just a banger. Isaiah chimes in and says the video said "Da Baby" beat. So it's a ripoff of Da Baby.
I can see Da Baby rhyming on that for sure.
Rob, are you a Da Baby guy?
I'm not. No.
Okay.
Can't say that's in my zone.
All right. So we have 5 questions here, or 5 topics here, because variables are topics, obviously, but they do have an adjoining question. So it's a little bit of both. First and foremost, historical precedent. We're talking about the West here, and we're obviously talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder. We've talked about them throughout the season, and of late, we've marked some of the things that they accomplished this year. 68 wins, one of a few teams who have done that. Best point differential, one of the best net ratings, I think second best in the league. And so my question, Rob, is this the inevitable champion hiding in plain sight to a certain degree? Because I feel like other than some of these other teams that they are comparable of in history, probably not getting some of the love postseason projection wise that they deserve. Or is there another team going to supplant them in the West? And if so, who?
Inevitable feels strong forecasting wise, but every indicator says that they are this sleeping giant. As you said, not just 68 wins, something that's been done a handful of times, most of which those teams went on to be champions. You mentioned the biggest point differential in history. All of the next 5 teams won the title, right? Like, this is the era that they've put themselves in. And not just that, but a ridiculous defense with an incredible amount of flexibility, a dominant superstar who no one has been able to stop all season long. I just don't know what the answers are for the Thunder. And it's okay to look at that team and say, okay, they are young. They haven't proven it yet in a round over round over round kind of way. And we all want to see that. But for my money, they look like a champion. They profile as a champion. I expect them to be a champion. Is that inevitable? No, because they've got to do it and they have to prove it. And so I understand some of the skepticism. It's just, how can you not be at least kind of bullish on what they could accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody says the Thunder are the favorite to win the West or even the title, I don't think that makes you a crazy person. I just think the way that we look at these historical indicators has to have some level of adjustment, just because of how the modern NBA and the freaking resting the superstars and guys staying out and teams just being straight up better. And I think there's 2 ways to look at it, right? Like that the Thunder were able to achieve this level of dominance in a league that feels like it has more parity than it ever has, speaks to something. But at the same time, it take, for instance, the Golden State and Houston series. They're going to play on Sunday, then Wednesday, then Saturday. Like, there's no regular season comp for that, where you play one team 3 times in a row and they have that much rest and preparation in between.
Yeah.
I just think that blows up the entire notion that they're just going to come in and steamroll everybody, based on their point differential, right? And so I think their resume clearly states that they're I don't even think they're a sleeping giant. Like, everybody should look at them as the favorite.
Yeah, they're a giant that just won 68 games. So
yes,
they're awake.
These guys are the real deal. I just don't think that it's as overwhelming as the resume would historically suggest that it is.
Here's the case against, because I would pick the Thunder in the West and probably am going to pick them overall in the finals. I think the case against them would be, have they solved the regular season? Have they just gotten to the point where they have the right mix of top-end talent plus the depth in order to trudge through an entire 82-game season in a way that few teams are capable of doing? Even the Cleveland Cavaliers had to build depth this season in order to get to around 60 this year. The fact that the Thunder didn't have Chet for half a season didn't matter. The fact that Hartenstein didn't play for the start of the season didn't matter. J-Dub's playing center. They lose like an AJ Mitchell here and there. They just shrug it off and they keep going. Is this going to maybe zero down on their biggest, in air quotes, issues? The fact that they just don't have as much juice surrounding Shea, for instance, in a short series. That would be the case against. I still think that they have enough solutions to solve against that, but probably more susceptible than another team of this ilk in years past.
I don't know about more susceptible, just because I would say their top 8 is still rock solid. It's not that they're getting some undue advantage from their 9th and 10th and 11th guys, even though those are really good players. If anything, they have the flexibility to say, okay, this is an Isaiah Joe series, and this isn't. This is an Aaron Wiggins series, and this isn't. This is a Case and Wallace series, and this isn't. And your ability to yo-yo those guys in and out of the lineup, modulate their minutes, modulate their place in the rotation, and having a coach who you trust to do that in Mark Daigneault, it's an incredible advantage to have. And so I hear you about how they like solving the regular season in a lot of practical senses, but show me the team that can stop Shea, and that's when I'll start to think, oh, maybe this is more of a regular season team than a playoff team.
Yeah, Shea, I thought was excellent in last year's playoffs. I thought, it felt like they got beat prematurely, especially losing in just 6 games in the second round. It overshadowed the fact that Shea was brilliant.
He was great in that series in particular.
Yeah, in that series, like for the first time in Shea's career, he could say like, yo, I was unstoppable in the playoffs. I anticipate that will be the case again. this postseason. So to me, this isn't really it's never been a Shea question for me. There are the kind of superstars, MVPs even, who James Harden, Joel Embiid, who go into the playoffs and be like, are they going to be able to replicate that level of production when it gets to the postseason against the best half-court defenses? Like, we've had those questions before. I don't have that with Shea. I know he's going to kick ass. Like, that's not even a question. I think for the Thunder, it is about the Isaiah Joes and the Chets and the Hartensteins and, and the Case and Wallaces and what these guys are going to be able to do around him. And J-Dub even too, because he struggled in the second round, especially what those guys are able to do around him.
Not to give Isaiah and Ben more work, but we really need a 3D model of a generic media member every time Waz busts out the impression, who just turns into a digital puppet to give us the straw men to battle against. Like, I want a visualization of what this guy looks like.
Waz GPT.
Although I'm a little scared to find out, Justin, that maybe he just looks like us. The generic media member he's talking about.
The generic media member is like, remember those like graphics you get of the median American in 2050?
Yeah.
Basically kind of looks Samoan or whatever. Like, that's the generic media member.
The future post-racial society.
Exactly.
In which we have fully melting potted together. That's who you're speaking from.
Yes, sir.
No. But I 100% agree with what you guys are saying. I do think there's like some margin for error. The fact that they have so many options, maybe they'll spend some time cycling through some of the wrong ones before they land on the correct one. But that's what Mark Dagnall's fallen for. And I do think he's been good at pulling the levers, getting development out of certain guys at certain times and playing the right guys at certain times. So I do think that we're at Occam's razor where there is a gap between the Thunder and everybody else. And I do think it will bear out in the postseason. But if you guys are looking at the other field, practically, is there one team that sticks out as like that is their primary competition? Because a lot of these teams practically finished 1 or 2 games apart.
Yeah.
From 2 until 8, we're talking 4 games.
Waz, do you feel great about any of these specific challengers?
I think everybody's going to give them a hard time. I really do. I think this version of the Clippers, if they beat the Nuggets, it's because Kawhi Leonard's still playing well. That version of the Clippers is going to give this team a hard time. The Nuggets, who, I'm hearing Nikola Jokic got a new pep in his step, feeling reinvigorated somehow. The Nuggets, I think, will give them a hard-ass time. I think their toughest matchup is the Lakers, actually. The last 2 times they played, they lost. We're on the road to losing until Luka got ejected for yelling at a fan, and the ref mistakenly thought he was yelling at him. I think the Lakers are their worst matchup because they can't press any of the Lakers' weaknesses, right? Like, they can't even, when somebody like kind of pokes the sore in a movie, like a guy's in the hospital and the dirty cop shows up and he like puts his finger in his sore. It's like, give me the goods right now. Like, they're not able to do that to the Lakers and their big man weaknesses. And maybe you could say, they could target Luka defensively or, do these other things. And mainly that's what I think is their problem. They don't have any great Luka answers defensively because we love J-Dub. We love Shea. We love, Lou Dort. But Lou Dort is even a little too short to guard Luka Doncic, right? But the problem with that is, like, I think Golden State would beat the Lakers in a series. I think that's a problematic matchup for the Lakers. And so I just think the way the West is shaken out, I don't know, man. They might not even have to play the Lakers, who I think is their toughest matchup.
Yeah, I think the rock, paper, scissors nature of that muddle in the middle of the West makes it really tough to parse the like big picture challenger to the Thunder. But you're right. As on like a individual game, individual series level of who the Thunder would run up against, the Lakers are a very particular kind of threat. And a particular kind of threat in Luka that they have not had a lot of success zeroing out and really challenging as of yet. Like, they're still trying to figure out what to do with a player like Luka in a series. And that's to say nothing of LeBron James sitting right over there as a backup playmaker or a secondary playmaker. I think to your point, though, was like each of these teams has an element that you could say, I believe in Jokic being able to bully some of these Thunder bigs. And Denver had, I think, the single most explosive game against the Thunder defense all season back in March. The Lakers had those 2 back-to-back games you mentioned in which they really put something on the table, says like, this is our body of work against this team. This is what we can do. I don't think Mark Dagnall brought out all the stops for those games in particular. Sure. I think that the Thunder knew this is a team that we could see in the playoffs, and their experimentation is probably more valuable to them than ours would be for us. And so they kind of played it pretty straight overall. But Derrick Jones Jr. has been one of the few defenders who's actually had some kind of impact on Shea. And so if he plays big minutes in the Clippers series and there's offensive trade-offs for that, that could really work in their favor. Golden State beat OKC twice before the Butler trade. And so they're a dramatically new team. I don't know what to make of all that, but their profile is much more dangerous than it used to be, much more like evolved and adaptive than it used to be. And so you can see like the germs of an idea for how these teams would put it together. I just don't know that any of them are going to do it for four times in 7. That's a lot to ask.
I do think it's the two LA teams that are probably the scariest to the Thunder. And I think the fact that the Lakers have such top-end talent that they can overwhelm any opponent with the juice and the on-ball playmaking is such an outlier and such an extreme as opposed to some of these other teams that are built a little bit more methodically and more traditionally. I think that's the one that is going to worry you because you just don't know how to wrangle 3 ball handlers who could put up 30 in any given game. And so even though the Thunder have this cavalcade of defensive swipers who could make it very difficult for them, it might just not matter because you just don't have the right guys, enough guys in order to stop all 3 of them simultaneously. A lot of it's going to come down to Luka being as healthy as he has. The fact that he's getting to the basket a little bit more of late in the past couple games is very big for them. Obviously, the rest games being built in. But the margin for error for this team, as opposed to even a team like the Clipper, is so narrow thin. It's like on a razor's edge. If they lose any one of their 5 guys from that small ball lineup that they've been so successful in, it's basically a wrap because you're counting on having 5 power forward, basically sized guys, or 4 of them plus Reeves, in order to build that advantage, to build collective size to make up for your lack of a rim protector.
Yeah.
But if things just go right, I can see it going very right.
Here's been the thing to sum it up, right? For me personally, just thinking about this variable. Dollinger sent out our NBA survey, right? NBA playoff survey. And I'm looking at the questions. And I've been puffing out my chest all year. Like, I'm going to take the field against the OKC Thunder in the West. They're not going to the finals. But the question was simple. It's like, pick your 2 finals teams.
Yep.
And then I just try to pick one of these other teams individually, and it's just hard. I've seen all of these guys fall flat on their face at various different points in the season all year. And like, I'm just, I'm faced, have to look in the mirror of my own hypocrisy. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, am I really about to pick the Thunder right now after just ragging on these guys all year? It's embarrassing.
I think you are about to pick the Thunder right now. But that is it, right? As far as Thunder inevitability goes, if you want to argue for anyone else, you have to make the case. You have to explain why that team could beat the Thunder, how they could outlast the Thunder, how they could get around a defense that's this formidable. It's a lot to ask, again, of any of these teams to do it consistently enough, not to say getting through every other team in the field along the way to get to the NBA Finals. Like, just beating the Thunder is really, really difficult. And so I really don't see any of these Western Conference teams doing it. I think their flaws are a little too fatal. I think the Thunder have too many options. I do think that, as we said, the Lakers probably present the most direct challenge, mostly because they can manipulate OKC's bigs in a way that other challengers can't. Like, even someone like Kawhi Leonard doesn't like pull and poke at Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein in the same way. Doesn't challenge them, pulling them out on the perimeter, putting so much pressure on your backline defense when it's a little bit smaller. The threats are just different when you have Luka and LeBron involved, and their ability to mismatch hunt, and their ability, because of their size, to render someone like Cason Wallace, for example, a little not irrelevant.
It's a non-starter.
It's just kind of a non-starter as far as those matchups go. And so, yeah, as well said, Lou Dort has to play big, has to play a lot, has to stay out of foul trouble. I think he can do those things most nights. And most importantly, I think their team defense can accomplish everything it needs to collectively.
And obviously seeding going to play a huge factor in here, probably more so than I could ever remember in my outlook for one conference playoffs, where it's like the Thunder getting a hobbled Grizzlies team with John Morant practically breaking every single game that he's playing at this point, versus the Lakers, who have to go through the Wolves in the first round in order to get to the ultimate like Western Conference Finals. It's just like a completely different task.
Well,
and
you're assuming that the Grizzlies even make it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't see the Kings or the Mavs beating them per se, even without Ja Morant, but we'll see.
Yeah. But not getting Golden State in that game is a big deal. You know, if we're going to talk about the Warriors as an actual serious contender, someone who can actually scare some of these high-end teams, not just in the West, but around the league. Getting them out of your immediate eye line is a big deal.
Totally. We'll talk about each individual Western Conference matchup a little later on. Let's go to number 2 on the Verrierables.
I just want to know your state of mind that led you into this particular genre. Like, what was your creative process?
He was tired of picking heavy metal. That's it.
Well,
I wanted
was
to
just
pivot.
1 year, right?
I can't remember anymore. There definitely was a very rockin' one, I believe, to start the season, maybe. But I actually went in looking for soul, like old school 70s style R&B. Unfortunately, finding that with the right keywords without stepping on copyright was a little difficult. So we evolved,
So we get these sorts of generic beats instead.
There you go.
All right.
Number 2, the waiting game. So we're talking about the East preview right now. Unfortunately, I think we all probably agree we're waiting until the conference finals when the Cavs and the Celtics will probably inevitably meet. What are you guys tracking until then? What's the most compelling thing? It could be a storyline. It could be a player. It could be anything. It could be medical staff that you guys are just fond of for whatever reason. What's on the top of your list until we get to that point?
For me, it's the Knicks. And it's particularly, it's the OG Anunoby, $40 million man. Mikal Bridges, 6th first-round draft pick, man. And Karl Anthony Towns. Like, OG got paid because he was seen as a key ingredient to making this team a serious contender. And they brought the other 2 in for that same reason, right? And I think, to me, it's all eyes on those 3 guys and able to prove that they're the type of core that could carry a team in the biggest moments in the playoffs. Like, that's what I'm watching. To me, I think Brunson has shown, like, he'll make big shots. He can score against pretty much anyone.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's going to be bad at defense. Like, we kind of know what Brunson has to offer. It's those other 3 in this context that I'm going to be looking towards.
Maybe not just even the other 3 too, but how many guys on their bench are actually playable? How many are going to survive? And not just a matchup against the Pistons, which
Landry Shamet, be ready to play 25 minutes a game, brother.
He's kind of been cooking lately.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm believing it because we've lived through this before, Landry Shamet. But he's going to get his chances, right? Like, he campaigned, Deuce McBride, who's had kind of an up and down year, but is so important to the Knicks. All those guys are going to get burned. Mitchell Robinson, I think, is walking into one of his more favorable matchups in terms of this Pistons team. Like, yeah, you're going to test him in the pick and roll, but at least it's a team with traditional bigs and a place for you to occupy and battle with physicality. That makes sense to me. I am interested in the Knicks, but I think I'm not even leaving the Cavs from my thing that I'm monitoring, which is I'm wondering, did Cleveland peak early or did they just get bored? No one would blame them for kind of going through a little bit of a lull, but since March 1st, 15-8, they were 9th on offense, 15th on defense. That's basically the profile like the Milwaukee Bucks overall for the season. And so are the Cavs the team that stormed out to an incredible start and looked dominant and then took their foot off the gas, which is, to me, to be honest, is what it feels like? Or have they settled into something that isn't as competitive as we thought they might be?
You looked Jared Allen in the eye and you talked all about his cat with him. You bonded over it, and here you are, just throwing him under the bus.
Unbelievable.
I'm saying
you
this
calling
is
them
what I'm
paper
monitoring.
tigers. You're calling them paper tigers. It's
I'm telling you right
disrespectful.
now, I believe that they are the team we saw early in the season, and they did not have sufficient motivation, in part because the Celtics also didn't seem super interested in the regular season for a variety of reasons, to really push hard all the way through. And maybe that'll serve them in the end, right? Like maybe ultimately them not going 100 miles an hour through the entire regular season is a good thing. But you got to find that gear again. You got to find the gear that you had, not just in, not all the way back to November, December, but even like January. Can you be the team that you were in January again? I think they have every tool at their disposal to be that. And I fully expect it, but you got to prove it.
So you don't think they're the 2007 Mavericks is what you're saying?
I do not think they're the 2007
Okay.
Mavericks per se.
But if the Bulls get in, who's to say?
We believe Bulls.
Yeah, there you go. the Rondo TNT Bulls, just bringing them back. At what point do you think you will be worried? Do you think that's going to come to bear in the first round? Do you think in the second round, potentially against like the Bucks popping up? What scares you until you get to the conference finals?
With all respect to the We Believe Bulls or whoever makes it out of this play-in group, I don't think anything in the first round is going to be particularly scary. And so you're really looking at that second round matchup, right? Like whoever makes it out between the Pacers and the Bucks is going to have to prove something to get there, and is going to be able to at least push the Cavs a little bit, right? To mess with the matchup, to exploit a little bit of weakness, to challenge Evan Mobley to be one of the best defensive players in the world, as he's shown to be, to show, where does push come to shove with Donovan Mitchell and his role with this team, where he has to go into that takeover gear that we've seen him, I think, err into, and sometimes unsuccessfully in playoff runs past when he's had to do that much. But like, where are those kind of fault lines for the Cavs is something that I'm watching.
Yeah, those are both good answers. I agree with Waz that the Knicks' early performances probably have the most legs in terms of impact later on in the East playoffs. Personally, I'm kind of looking forward to what we're going to get with playoff Giannis, because we haven't seen him in so long. And so I'm just kind of want to recalibrate where Giannis is just in the hierarchy of things, because it was the last time he played a fully healthy playoffs. So before they got ejected by the Heat, this is 2022, where they made it to the second round, lost to the Celtics, 31.7 points, 14.2 rebounds, 6.8 assists, 1.3 blocks.
He is
one of the absolute menaces in the postseason. And I think you could write off the past couple of results in the playoffs as Giannis just wasn't available. I know the Bucks definitely believe that. Well, let's see. They don't have the horses in order to make probably even a push past the first round, let alone the second. But I'm just curious because I want to see one of the best players on the biggest stages.
I mean, in 23 against the Heat, he missed multiple games in that series.
He played 3.
Yeah. So he was not himself.
Nope.
In that series. I'll just say this. Giannis, since Dame has gone down, has basically gone back to Giannis ball, which is just spread him out, let Giannis be the creator, be the be-all, end-all, like do all of that. And that's fine and dandy in the regular season, but that has not always been a great course of action for the Bucks in the playoffs. So we'll see.
They're a little more predictable for sure. And there's a lot of weird whispering and reporting right now that Damian Lillard has some chance to come back and play with this blood clot issue. I find that hard to believe, but
so
I don't know.
So at the time of the diagnosis, or whenever he got on the I was about to say paint thinners, on the blood thinners, whenever he got on that, the diagnosis would be 4 to 6 weeks. And I think we're 4 weeks out right now.
Yeah.
Or next week, sorry. Next week we will be 4 weeks out. So a week from today, we will have been 4 weeks out from that. So I understand how they're finessing that. It just seems unlikely, man, that this guy would come back in 5 weeks or something like that. It just, I don't know. But I get why you want to give the fans some hope.
Yeah, that would obviously change the shape of this first round, and obviously the Bucks' future. We'll get into that probably a little bit later. Seems unlikely, especially considering what a scary potential thing that is, and the fact that like Wemby was shut down immediately for the rest of the season earlier in the year when he went down with a similar thing. So we'll see about that. But I don't know. I'm keeping an eye on the Bucks because I think the Pacers should win that series. But if Giannis is just going to go supernova, like anything's possible.
That's the thing. If the Bucks win, it will be representative of Giannis going absolutely hog wild. And so, it's a great thing to kind of keep the pulse on so far. I'm also kind of wondering what the state of Jaylen Brown's knee is in these early rounds. He hasn't looked
Zay got
great.
Me scared 2 days ago talking about that knee.
It hasn't looked great, and he can still play well despite that. He's an incredibly skilled player. Like, he has enough going for him that he can make things work, but a lot of the Celtics' flexibility depends on their core guys being incredibly agile, incredibly versatile, able to handle a wide variety of assignments and responsibilities. And when you're ailing a little bit, it limits your capacity to do that.
But you guys are fully expecting Cavs Celtics unless something dramatic happens.
I am
too.
Okay. I am as well. All right, let's go to number 3 then. The looming offseason.
was like, why is Justin looking to the sky right now?
He's trying to remember his SoundCloud password.
Oh, God.
Rob, you don't seem to be as into the groove.
I gotta say, it just doesn't speak to me, in
No?
the way that apparently the medal did. I would not have anticipated that, but
maybe Postal Service ripoff next time for you.
Well, see, we're halfway there. You jazz this up a little bit and certainly put like an indie vocal over the top, and all of a sudden we have a Postal Service song.
That's true. It's true. Okay, so the impact on the offseason from the playoffs vantage point, which team or person has the most on the line this postseason? I'm going to actually go first in this one because we're just talking about the Bucks and Giannis. I would say the Giannis chatter has become quite loud, kind of unignorable. I think a lot of it has filtered into the public at large. I have been going to games in the Hoop Summit over the past week, and I would say 2 to 3 people brought it up just offhands. Like, have you heard about Giannis? Have you heard about this buzz that's kind of building?
There's a lot of people just asking questions,
Yeah.
Just like, what happens if they lose in this fashion? What happens if it looks like this? What happens if Dame asks out? Or is Dame already anticipating Giannis asking out? Like, a lot of tea leaves to read, certainly, with that team.
And then our friend Woz dropped a link to us the other day after we were talking about this behind the scenes, a weird quote from Giannis in which let's just say first and foremost, he was saying this in a joking manner. And he even says he was talking about the Lakers, and I guess the beat writers were asking about the Lakers, Luka going back to Dallas. And he said, let's say something funny was his interlude into this, which, all right. And he basically posited, well, maybe all of the European superstars should go to the big markets. Luka to the Lakers. Maybe Jokic wants to go to the Knicks. He didn't say himself, but you know what? Sure sounds like he might be projecting a little bit. And I would say in the past, Giannis hasn't done a good job at maybe concealing his feelings. He isn't very good at putting the veil over what he truly thinks. And so that seemed a little curious to me. Waz, did it to you as well?
Not really. If you put the totality of Giannis's public statements into full context, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, we paint Giannis with the poor, humble immigrant, blah, blah, blah nonsense that we throw on all the international guys, basically with a broad brush. But let me tell you something. Giannis loves his numbers. He loved tracking his little triple doubles. He loved it when he was getting all eyes on me for the MVP. He absolutely is very individual recognition minded. He is. And I think him seeing Luka Doncic shoot to #1 in jersey sales. Luka was never close to that. Giannis pays attention to who's selling the most jerseys, bro. I promise you, because it's another individual stat. And so he sees all of that. And he's like, ain't shit changed with this dude going to the Lakers. Like, damn, that's what happens when you go to a major media market and, basically all of the same contributions that you've been doing since you become a star in this league just gets magnified because of this new platform. He notices that. And I think the chatter is just around Giannis being like, look, I did my small market thing for a decade plus. I put the blood, sweat, and tears in.
Yeah,
let me go be a matinee idol somewhere.
I also don't have a problem with someone like him valuing those individual achievements. Like, I think it's cool when a guy wants to win something, as long as their priorities don't shift away in a way that's like detrimental to the team, right? Like, you would never look at Giannis and say, okay, his pursuit of these statistical benchmarks, his pursuit of an MVP comes at the cost of being a good team player, because it comes at the cost of being a great defender. Like, I think he does enough of the all-around stuff. And yes, there are some indulgences, and there have always been.
Of efficient offense at times, but I digress.
My guy shoots like 70% from the field and has been a part of one of the most efficient offenses for the vast majority of his playing prime. Like, I think it's fair game for stars to take some shots that we may disagree with. I think it's fair game for them to try to stretch their games and see, I know I'm not a shooter, but like, I'm going to see if I can hit these threes. And I think some of that paid off this season in terms of his evolution from the mid-range too. Like, it is a process. And so I don't think, given, as Waz said, Giannis's body of work and the commitment he's shown to the city of Milwaukee so far and the Bucks so far, if the Bucks are out, The problem is not the small market, big market thing. It's that you look at the Bucks and say, how is this team going to get better? Like, what is the path forward?
Yeah,
yes, independent of his personal goals or even this backdoor rumor mongering that's kind of taken in a life of its own, I think the Bucks have run their course. You know, like
It feels
they're
that way.
going to start, if Dame doesn't miraculously show up for game one, a guy at point guard who had to be converted from his two-way in March. That was a month ago.
Ryan Rollins. Don't
Ryan
throw him
Rollins.
under the bus.
You seem like a cool guy, but you shouldn't be starting at point guard for a guy who's in the MVP conversation every single time. And so,
Yes.
I don't know. I actually don't know if I want to step into this, but I do want to ask you, now that we have had 2 years of this going forward, like, are we sure that the Dame Lillard trade was the right move for them? Because I know that like Giannis was saying things yet again 2 years ago about wanting upgrades and having eyes for other places. I just think back, I'm like, well, Drew plus maybe another move where you use some of those picks to buoy what that construction had might have still worked. But then again, like Chris Middleton was always hurt.
Yeah.
Everyone was just getting older. So I don't know. Maybe it would have been this regardless, but this was not it.
Do we think the Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton on one wheel version of this is better than Boston? No, we don't.
No.
Well, I guess Boston doesn't have Drew Holiday, who's
Honestly,
like
not an
apparently
insignificant thing.
the skeleton key to championships, apparently, if the media is to be believed. But like, I don't.
Drew Holiday truthing.
Brad Beal over here, just knocking Drew Holiday for no reason.
How dare you disrespect me? I don't know. I think I loved the idea at the time because their problem was half court offensive efficiency.
Yeah.
And Dame Lillard, his whole career, has been a part of efficient ass half court offenses. Like, I understand. The deal made sense to me at the time. It just straight up hasn't worked. And that's the game, man. Like, I'd rather see teams do this than do the Danny Ainge and just wait for the perfect trade, even if it takes 10 years. Like, I'd rather the Bucks did this than did nothing, in my opinion.
I don't disagree with you, Waz, but I have to put it to you as the preeminent push it all in, go for it advocate. I would say in the broader NBA universe, like, do things like the Suns give you pause at all of a team that just like went for it, and now are on the like the precipice of destruction?
So I think it's different versions of it. I think the Nuggets going all in this year and perhaps telling Michael Porter Jr. and some other things and being like, yo, we're going to bring in a bona fide all-star to give this a different shape. Yes. The Suns just haphazardly trying to build off of a thing that Chris Paul built. Keep it 1,000 without him. And it's just like, I don't think so. And that's the same reason why, you know, like, my man Tom Haberstroh like put out a stat that like Jokic has never played with an all-star. It's kind of fucking crazy.
Wild.
He's never played with an all-star.
It's also like a little, I don't know. It's a little cheap. Like Jamal Murray was on the fringes practically every year. Like
but he's never made it.
They have a core four that's like unlike anything else.
He's never been snubbed from an all-star team, Justin. He just straight up has never been good enough to make an all-star team.
Available. Right.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
What I'll say about that is
it speaks to the quality. It speaks to the quantity of games, but yeah.
It's both.
I think it's both. I think the idea that Jokic would demand a trade, I think KD's a cautionary tale. Like, I think that's a bad idea to demand a trade. I think it's just like, yo, make the shit that's over here better. This idea that they're going to ship me, send all of this stuff, send all of their best young guys, send all of their good, cheap contracts, value contracts, plus their most overpaid player to get me in there. And then what? I think, again, Golden State around Steph. Yeah, man, push the chips in. Take a chance on Steph Curry. Take a chance on Jokic by upgrading what's around him. Completely starting from scratch by just plopping shit together, I don't think is a good idea.
I don't think the issue with the Dame trade was trading for Dame. I think it was the fact that what was left over for Giannis and Dame was just not at the level that they needed to. They only had like 3 to 4 decent rotation players this entire time. Dame was practically an all-star this season, and even though the pairing itself hasn't melded in a way that is just like Stockton and Malone 2.0, like they just haven't had the requisite depth in order to trudge through a season because both of those guys are older. Dame in particular. Giannis has gotten hurt more recently in recent years. And so it really, I think they would have ended up in this situation regardless, unless they would have found a way to add like 3 to 4 guys to support even the Drew, Chris Middleton, Giannis situation.
I think that's true. Yeah. What's up?
Question to just stay on this. Bucks and Nuggets. Let's just say they both flame out in the first round this year. Would you trade Dame for Jamal Murray?
For who?
Dame for Jamal Murray.
Like for the Bucks? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think you would rather Jamal Murray at this point just because he's younger and has a longer runway. Yeah,
but like,
but it also that swap doesn't get you anywhere. Like it doesn't get you where you need to go. Yeah, you have the same construction of a team, and this is where like revisit the question of like how do we feel about the trade? The premise made sense to us then. It still makes sense to me now in the sense that like you get the star when you can get them and you don't always get to pick and choose who that is or what their state is when they come to your team. Like maybe they are a little injured. Maybe they are a little run down. Maybe they're Damian Lillard at this stage in his career. That's all well and good as long as you think it can get you over the top and you anticipate, okay, we're going to make the 2 and 3 moves later that we need to round out this rotation. And the Bucks have never been able to do that. They've never really been able to mine, the Chris Dunn types that you just need to turn out to make a rotation work, right? They've been stuck with like, I guess we're just living and dying with Gary Trent jumpers tonight. Like that's what their fate has been in terms of their supporting cast.
I've always said that the most challenging thing in team building is getting a superstar. And once you have a superstar, it's literally everything else. And you're right. It's like the Marjon Beauchamps, it's the AJ Johnson swing and misses that just never came to bear. They need depth. They've always needed depth. All right, but we did 20 minutes on this. So do you guys have a different answer for this question?
It's
team or
same.
person? Yeah, okay.
It's the same. It's actually Murray and Porter Jr. These guys, I think they're on the clock. I really do. And it's because I did talk to my man Adam Mares last weekend, and he's as plugged in Denver as anybody. And he's like, bro, I think they're going to try to get an all-star this offseason.
Yep.
And you cannot do that because of the nature of the salary cap without moving one or two of those two guys. Obviously, you're not moving Nikola Jokic. And so all eyes are on those guys and what the Nuggets decide to do this offseason. If they can't prove like, no, we're game to be, back to being the type of 2023 championship contender that we were.
I mean, that's not a franchise that's operating in a conservative way right now. Like they're angling to make big, decisive changes. Exactly. So it makes sense that those two guys would be on the clock.
It's a bleak situation, though. I need to trade the guy we just extended at max money, not max years, but max money, for a guy who's better at the same level of play. Like, oh man, I don't know how they're going to pull that off.
But that's where you're angling for something like a Dame trade, right? Not him specifically, but someone who is
less years on the deal,
like a little older for a team that maybe is trying to get younger or reset in their own way. I think that's going to be on the table. I also think the Grizzlies, there's just like a very real chance that we're seeing the end of the John Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson version of this team. Another team that's been operating with an incredible sense of urgency, as they have told us. So I think there's going to be real changes in Memphis too.
Watching Ja go out, or at least hobble his way through the end of that game, was so depressing. The fact that this just keeps happening, it's not necessarily his fault per se, but like, it's just his body just isn't built for the way he's going to play.
It's crazy because it's so like pulls me in different directions. Like watch the visceral feeling of Ja Morant do all of the crazy stuff that he does. When I'm talking to a buddy, we're texting during the game. He's like, bro, he's getting hurt because of all the acrobatics. I'm like, yo, but that's what makes him Ja. That's what makes this guy singular. But like maybe a more conventional approach would save his body more, man. It's such a paradox for me.
Yeah, but if he takes a more conventional approach, who is he as a player? I think down the stretch of that game, there was actually some pretty good evidence that he can play more conservatively. Like he was just kind of trying to be responsible with that ankle and was still able to make a difference. That said, was getting targeted on defense, as injured players often are when they try to hobble through a game. I respect the way John Morant plays a lot. And I think his creativity is so central to what makes him an appealing player, what makes him a superstar. And if you're not leaving your feet outside the paint every time and giving yourself those chances to be creative, who are you at that point?
Yeah. All right. Number 4, playoff guys.
No one needs that.
This one has 2 parts. Part 1. Which guy is going to be a guy this postseason, also known as who's like your X factor? Who's the guy who might make a huge difference that you didn't see coming?
I have a whole spectrum of guys to the surprise of no one. Like, can you give me a baseline, Justin, of when you're thinking about guy becoming a guy? Who are you talking about?
You want me to give you my answer here?
Give me one name.
Well, I'll give you 2 because I initially picked Austin Reeves, but I think he might have like crossed the threshold.
He's already a capital G guy.
That's
or
right.
a dude, dare we say.
And so I went with Desar Thompson, a guy who's going to be on the biggest guys for whomever they face in the playoffs. If Jalen Brunson is going to be hobbled, I think it's not going to help to have one of the most hounding defenders in the league kind of picking him up before half court, probably.
He could definitely ruin Jalen Brunson's season. And is Amen Thompson too much of a guy to be a guy?
No, he's way too mainstream. We almost didn't pick him for Group Chat Player of the Year because he was so popular.
I mean, that's true. I'm just trying to figure out what a capital G guy means.
How many awards can we give to Amen Thompson at this point? Like,
I mean, we'll make up some more. He's deserving of all of them. Does Zubats count? Ivica Zubats?
No, I love that.
Too much of a guy.
Especially as an X factor.
That's the thing. He's going to go toe-to-toe with one of the best players in the world, and his ability to hold up defensively might swing that whole series.
It's true.
I mean, my X Factor guy was in the same sort of realm as a Zubac, and it's Lou Dort, who made half of his threes in the first round of last year's playoffs. Then in the second round, shot 30%.
Yep.
I think he's going to be more consistently reliable from 3 this year, and that's going to make a huge difference in the Thunder offense because it just balances the lineup so beautifully when you can't leave this guy wide open and have these record scratch possessions while he's doing, defensive player of the year work on the other end.
Yep.
Who else did you have, Rob?
Ty Jerome. I think the world is about to figure out who Ty Jerome is, and he's one of the NBA's gutsiest shot makers. I think a Cleveland run would be awesome for him. Christian Brown, I think, is ready for a different kind of prime time. He's already proven to be a real playoff performer and somebody you can
earn his
rely
keep
on
against Harden.
He will, and a lot will be asked of him, but I think he's up to that challenge. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, because if the Wolves do make it out of the first round, it will be because he put Austin Reeves in clamps for the majority of that series.
And
I think
he
that's
made
gonna
his
be a real thing.
threes.
And he made his threes. Isaiah Stewart will get ejected, will also win some games for Detroit. I feel pretty good about that. Jarris Walker has had a really interesting month, and I don't know if he is a factor for the Pacers or not. But this
interesting month for Jarris Walker.
You are the lone member of
I'm
this
just saying
island.
facts. I'm just saying things that are empirically true.
Jarris Walker.
You two
he's
can
gonna be
come
playing
crawling
Summer
back
League
to
again.
me. When Jarris Walker has a podium
Walker.
game, I will accept your apologies.
It's been a little while since Rob has shoehorned this man into a group chat. But just hearing it, I felt a pang. I'm like, Jarris Walker, we're back to this again?
That brings you back.
Okay.
Those are some good ones, though. Let's flip to the part B of this, which is the other end of the spectrum. Who is going to be the queen on the chessboard for this postseason? And now, I want to clearly define this because this isn't necessarily who's the best player in the league, because obviously we would all say Jokic. I think it's a combination of the best player, but also with a team with a chance to do something significant. I am more muted on the Nuggets' chances to even get out of the first round, and so I wouldn't say Jokic. I'm curious what you guys have. Rob, do you want to
I didn't understand the question, so I just picked the Celtics.
Yeah, I'm still not sure I understand the question.
You got to beat the champs, and so I'm like, Celtics, Tatum, Boston.
The guy you got to go through. The guy that you're most afraid. Like, so for instance, Shea is the best player probably on the best team.
Yes.
But like, are you as afraid of Shea as you are, for instance, LeBron? Because LeBron, anything could happen. You just have to go through that guy.
But you don't have to go through that guy because that guy might lose to the Wolves.
Yeah, I just didn't. Yeah, like these guys who could lose in the first round, I can't.
That's
I'm
what
like,
makes it
how
hard,
are you
yeah.
the queen on the chessboard if I could easily see you losing to the Wolves?
If you're losing the queen on your chessboard in the equivalent of a first round series, you're not very good at chess.
Yeah, so that's why I was just like, Boston, man, to beat the champs, you got to beat the champs. And straight up and down, if Cleveland actually beats Boston, then like to me, they're my championship favorite. Straight up. Like, they're my pick to win the finals. If these guys find a way to beat Boston 4 times, you know, like, that's how I see it. So that's why I'm like, it's the champs. It's Boston. It's Tatum. It's, you know, make Tatum look average. You know, make them pay for playing an injured Jaylen Brown. You know, somebody finally attack Derek White with some consistency. Nobody ever does it.
So,
you know,
your entire chessboard is full of queens, is what you're saying. You have a team
I don't
worth
know how
of
to play
queens.
chess. That's another thing that fucked up this question.
Okay. Off-season project for Woz. Learn how to play chess. We'll send him to the park. But I took it in a similar direction to maybe fit the brief slightly more, Justin. I'm going to say it's like a combination Tatum and Brown situation, and anything other than that feels a little disrespectful to what the Celtics are. And you can put those guys on each other's shoulders. You can tie them together like a three-legged race situation, however you want to make them one guy. But their combined ability to respond, not just to adversity, but to tactical like distinctions in a series and the evolution of how these matchups evolve over time, the balance in their skill sets, all of that is so tough to overcome. It's really hard to get a foothold against the Celtics to understand, like, so where do we attack? So how can we get leverage in this series? And a lot of that comes down to Tatum and Brown being as balanced as they are.
It appears that I did not define the question well enough in order to get a good answer to this, so maybe we just move along.
I do want to say, though, shout out to those 2 black queens in Boston, man, in Tatum and Brown.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Number 5.
You say it as if it's an inside. I'm not touching it. I'm not touching
that
it.
One.
I'm backing up. Some days you just got to get out of the frame with Woz, and you don't want to be in the clip. And that's what today is.
Number 5, predictions. All right.
Are you proud of yourself? Like of where your career has gone?
Absolutely not. I did not expect to be here. That's for sure. All right. We're going to predict every series on the board and for every series that we actually have the matchup. So not the 1-8s.
Yes.
We're going to give a key to every matchup. Although, let's be honest, we're going to pick the ones in both series. Let's start with the East because I think we can breeze through this a little bit. Cavs versus whomever. We're going to pick the Cavs. Yes. Thumbs up. Great.
Yes.
Celtics Magic. Who do you got?
Celtics in 6.
Same.
Okay. I didn't pick games, but I also have the Celtics. What do we have for the key for this series?
I think it's about like, how do you extend this series if you're the Magic? And the way to do that is the only way to actually like gum up what Boston does is you have to force a lot of turnovers. This is one of the lowest turnover teams in the league in the Celtics against a team that generates a ton of them. And so if the Magic like physicality can actually disrupt some of that ball movement, then you've got a shot. Then you're getting out in transition. Then you're getting easy points. If it doesn't, the Orlando offense is just dead in the water against this team. Like they just cannot score enough if they're not generating momentum in transition. So I think the possession battle is actually pretty big.
To me, it's about, can you guard Tatum respectably? You know, keep like honestly, not have to send a shit ton of help or God forbid double teams at him. And, you know, if Paolo and Franz and Tony Black and all these other guys, when they get on them on switches, if they can maintain their integrity and keep Boston at a reasonable half-court offense efficiency, then okay. But we know they're not going to score. So, like, I don't know. Like, I don't
Look, some days apparently Cole Anthony's just going to hit all his shots. Like, that is a thing that can happen.
That's fair.
I wrote down score more than 85 points a game.
It does help. It does help.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, everybody want to bring the 90s back. Come to this Boston Magic series.
I'm surprised you said 6 though, Rob, because I could see this 4 at most. I
could see Boston taking it easy. Just like save our legs for the real teams.
I also think this is the one matchup that Orlando actually is kind of built for. Like this is what they do, is muck up teams like this, and they do have so much length and they do have so much their defense is incredible. It's just that they don't have enough to score.
Yeah. All right, Knicks Pistons.
I'm Knicks in 6 on this one.
Knicks in 7.
I'm going to go Knicks in 6, I guess. I could see it in 5. I think this is where the Pistons kind of top out on what has been a very nice season for them. The offense can be sludgy, especially if they're not hitting their shots. And I do think, like, despite everything that's happened for the Knicks, if they are whole, if Jalen Brunson is healthy, which we don't know, he kind of like sleptwalked through the remaining couple games in order to be All-NBA eligible. this is still one of the best teams in the league. Despite everything that happened, 5th on offense, like 8th on net rating, this is still a very good team. The top end is still something to behold. So I can see this actually being shorter than we think.
I picked this to be a long series because Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson are going to play 40 minutes a game, which gives the Pistons ample opportunity to spam their pick and roll, which is all they want to do anyway.
Yep.
And that's why I think matchup-wise, it's like this team has that heliocentric matchup hunting guy on their team, and the Knicks present easy targets for that at both the point of attack and on the back end. And so that's why I'm like, I could just see this going 7 and the Knicks, pull out a nice win at home in front of their fans at the Garden.
That's why I think the key thing is not just who guards Cade, but how the Knicks are guarding Cade and how weird they're willing to be, because this deep drop shit against Cade Cunningham does not work well. Like he's too good a mid-range shooter. He's too good at reading the floor if you give him any kind of space whatsoever. And so the Knicks have they tried to put Mikal Bridges on him as much as possible to play really conventionally. It hasn't gone great. They've tried Deuce McBride. It still hasn't really gone great. Like Cade has averaged incredible numbers in terms of raw production in these matchups against the Knicks. And the Pistons went 3-1 in that season series for that reason. Like he is a very specific kind of threat that, as you're saying, challenges their best players in exactly where they do not want to be challenged. And so if the Knicks don't get a little bit weird, I think they put a lot of pressure on their offense to just overwhelm this thing. And they can do that, but these games are going to be tighter than they would like.
I think the headline I'd want for the Knicks is that they didn't get dragged into the mud with all of the Pistons bad boy 2.0 shit. Like, I do think there's a possibility where Isaiah Stewart starts holding Karl Anthony Towns and he starts getting into a whole tizzy there. Like,
how many octaves do you think Cat will pitch down his voice for the post-game interview after Isaiah Stewart gets ejected?
He's going to go full baritone at that point.
I can't wait.
But like you want to end this as soon as possible because you need more rest days than practically every other team on the board. And the Pistons are going to want to literally fight you every single game. And the atmosphere at MSG is going to only compound that. Just get out of there. Don't deal with the bullshit and just like almost rise above that in a way that I honestly don't think that they can, but we'll see.
I'm also surprised to hear you say that, Justin. Like, you are not a rise above it kind of person, temperamentally speaking.
I take great umbrage with that. In fact,
various business in the streets.
I'm just saying.
I would say that's what I want for them. That's what I would prescribe. Okay. I'm not necessarily that's what I want to see.
Okay. Do what I say, not what I do.
Exactly.
Okay.
So just one last thing on the Pistons. I learned approximately like 2 months ago that Isaiah Stewart was Jamaican, and pretty much everything about this guy came into crystal clear vision for me.
Wow.
To the point where like he is the stereotype of the angry Jamaican. And now I just saw a clip. He's doing Jamaican dance hall records too. He's cutting tracks in the studio.
I haven't heard these tracks. We got to get up on the beef stew.
Yeah.
Can we hire him for the next Verrierables? You think?
I would love that.
Let's do it. But yeah, angry Jamaican Isaiah Stewart it's just perfect. Chef's kiss.
Okay. Pacers Bucks, last one in the East. Rob, what do you got?
Pacers in 5.
Whoa.
Pacers in 6.
Quick one. I'll go Pacers in 6 as well. I blew all my Giannis material up top.
Yeah, it's the same thing. For me, it's like Giannis versus a respectable playoff half-court defense, which I think the Pacers now actually are. When Nesmith and Nembhard are actually in the rotation.
Agreed.
And Pascal Siakam and stuff like that. And so this is a respectable half-court defense. And as Rob said, they're just so predictable, man.
Yeah.
And that's been Giannis's kryptonite in his whole playoff career, even when things were going great. And so, yeah, I just don't think they're going to generate good enough offense, and that'll be that.
I just don't think they have, like, especially without Dame, they don't have the flex scoring that you need. Giannis is going to be great. He's going to put up monster numbers. He's going to dominate.
When he can get it in transition or off of the offensive glass, it's going to be awesome.
Yes.
But other than that.
And I want to give them credit because in the regular season, even after Dame went down, their half-court offense running that way, playing that style, has been quite good. I just think it gets more complicated in the playoffs. They've been doing it so much by committee in a way that is great for the regular season, but makes me a little bit nervous when you start keying in on matchups. Like, if Ryan Rollins doesn't get 10 random points, you might lose. If Kyle Kuzma and Gary Trent aren't hitting threes, you might lose. If you're relying on Kevin Porter Jr. to be important for your team, you have already lost. So Pacers in 5.
If Jarris Walker goes off for 6 points,
He might.
no coming back
He
from
might.
that, baby.
Look, some things can't be overcome. Jarris Walker is one of them.
All right, Western Conference, Thunder versus TK. I think we'll all pick the Thunder in that one. Rockets and Warriors. This is when it starts getting tough.
I'm going Warriors in 7.
Yeah, I'll do the same.
Warriors in 6. I just think the Rockets are so easy to guard, predictable. And the Warriors have that veteran know-how. They got Draymond, Jimmy, like basically barking out orders. Steve Kerr, like these guys, I think the Rockets are going to give them their offense a hard time. But then they have so many ways to guard Jimmy and Steph. That'll be a fascinating thing to pay attention to. But yeah, Warriors are going to beat these guys. They can't score.
They have all that know-how, and I think if the Rockets are going to win, it's going to be through more attrition. It's going to be wearing these guys down. The size advantages that they have, the way that Amen is going to be trying to swamp and create so much chaos around Steph, whether he's on the ball or not. Like, this is a young, quick twitch, like jet fuel Rockets team. And you can beat that with savvy, but it takes a lot of work to do it, and it might take a lot out of you to do it over 7 games.
So last night, right, we know the Memphis Grizzlies are whatever the antithesis of savvy is. That's what they are. However, in the third quarter and throughout the fourth, they had the Ja Morant pick and roll. They had Desmond Bane just being individually awesome, like making every shot. Like, they had these like dynamic capabilities. The Rockets don't possess any of that. None of that.
I'm a little worried about shortchanging the Rockets too much, though, because we got into this issue last year going into the first round between the Thunder and the Pelicans, I believe. And now the Pelicans lost Zion, and so it was kind of a bit of a moot point. We were all wondering, like, could the Pelicans upset the Thunder? Thunder were a week 1. And so we're like, that was an actual conversation I remember having. And I do wonder if we give too much credit to these teams that we all believe in because of the top end talent, ignoring like the actual results that we just trudged through for 6 months or however long a regular season is, where it's like the Rockets have some fucking dogs and they are going to be able to envelop guys like Jimmy and those guys a little bit more than maybe people are expecting. Having said that, I am picking the Warriors in part because I did watch Jimmy Butler draw fouls when he was here in Portland the other day, and just watching him being able to like bump guys and nudge them in a way that moves their momentum but doesn't really count as an offensive foul, and just manipulate angles just like by leveraging his body and contorting and like almost burrowing into guys in order to do so. Like, he's a goddamn magician at this point, and he's playing at the peak of his powers. Margin for error super small for them. If they lose one of those guys, I'm concerned. Steph's thumb is a huge concern. I feel like we got 90 cutaways to the wrapping on it last night. What I have down here is Gary Payton II. I do think he is the small ball skeleton key for the Warriors, and not coincidentally, Kerr leaned on him last night in the biggest moments against the Memphis Grizzlies. And so I do think he unlocks certain lineups for them, and at the very least keeps it so they don't have to go and dig Jonathan Kuminga out from the pile of laundry that Kerr has buried him under.
Yeah, I think that door might be closed.
I think so.
The Kuminga experiment seems to be fully over. Maybe there is a random playoff game somewhere along the way where they dust him off and throw him out there just to spice things up and change the matchup a little bit. But I see the Gary Payton vision. I think he is important to the rotation. Like, he has to work. Like, his minutes have to make some kind of sense, as do all of a sudden like Guy Santos and Quentin Post and all these guys. And I'm a little worried about the size because they do want to play small in that way you're describing. Draymond is going to have to wrestle with some real big boys on every board. And Quentin Post, I would say both in terms of his skill set and how Steve Kerr likes to use him, Golden State likes to use Quentin Post against other small teams to be the big force because he's not actually that physical, but he's big enough that he can fake it against smaller teams. You're not going to fake it against Steven Adams. You're not going to fake it against Alperen Şengün. Like, those guys are going to body you.
Peyton is more of a center than Quentin Post is the center.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and I do think it puts a spotlight on Podziemski and Moody, both of whom have been good of late. But now it's less of like, can these guys be long-term pieces? Can they be current day rotation players that we're going to rely on for 30 plus minutes? And so, we'll see. That's going to be an awesome series.
I want to flag one more thing about Jimmy too, who was awesome down the stretch in that Grizzlies game, and his ability to handle the ball opens up Steph as a ball screener. All this other action triangulated through Draymond. Like, it works really, really well. you're now going to ask him over the course of this series, presumably, to do a lot of heavy manufacturing against elite half-court defense. And when the free throws are coming and you're getting those whistles, that works. And when it doesn't, it can get a little dicey. He's not like the strongest finisher inside all the time, especially when you have good length down there and athleticism down there. The mid-range can come and go. The threes apparently are back because it is April, and this is what Jimmy Butler does. But a lot is asked of him. And we're going to see if he's up to the challenge. Historically, the answer is obviously yes. One of the great winners in modern NBA history delivers in exactly these moments. But getting older in age, we'll see kind of what the Warriors have in store in terms of their half-court offense, and if he in particular is going to be up for that.
All right, 2 more left on the board here. Lakers, Wolves, probably the one I am anticipating the most. Waz, who do you have?
Lakers in 7. I think Luka finally looks closer to the Luka that we know. And by the Luka that we know, I'm talking about that 2021 series against the Clippers in the first round, where this guy was unconscious against Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, who at that time, reputationally, were the most feared perimeter defenders in the league. He made these fools look like YMCA players. And so,
first of all, as a YMCA player myself, that's just uncalled for.
If he can get closer to that, man, that's what I'll be looking for. And mainly what I'm looking for is, can LeBron score in the paint? Can he get, downhill versus his one-on-ones? Can he beat up certain matchups with his post play? Can he get to the line? That'll be the key to me. If he's doing that, I think the Wolves are toast.
I'm also Lakers in 7. What are you thinking, Justin?
Yeah, I'm 7 now. I'm leaning 6. I do think it's incumbent on the Wolves to match the juice that the Lakers are going to put out there. I do think the matchups aren't terrible, although at a certain point, who are you putting on Reeves? And it's probably going to be Conley or someone like that.
Yeah,
I think
DiVincenzo maybe.
Yeah, that's the sore spot. I do want to see DiVincenzo kind of flip back to Knicks era DiVincenzo for this series. I have Julius Randle down as kind of the biggest X factor in this one, because you got him in no small part because you wanted more flex, both with your books and definitely with your lineup. He's been pretty good of late. Since he came back from this groin injury, he's probably been the most contained, streamlined version that we've seen of Randle. And I think you're going to want to lean on him more than you probably should in any playoff series, just because I don't know where else they're getting that from. They need a pop. Otherwise, you're kind of banking on Anthony Edwards being meteoric every single game. And he could do that, but I don't think you can count on that.
It's tough. Again, this is a series that's going to stretch Anthony Edwards' ability to read the floor, his playmaking, to break down the defense as really a ball-dominant player. And that's kind of who he needs to be for this build of the Wolves to work. Overall, I think regardless of what the lever to pull is, and maybe it's Randle in certain situations, maybe it's deploying Ant in particular ways, maybe it's a lineup choice, I think the Wolves need to figure out their formula very, very quickly. I just think if you're playing against Luka or LeBron in a series, the clock is kind of ticking on you from the moment it starts. Those are guys who are going to take a minute to feel things out, and the more you give them on tape and the more you give them to look at, the more they're going to break you down and pull what you're doing apart. And so if the Wolves can't come out and play with a ton of energy and build leads early in games, early in the series, I just don't have a lot of faith in their ability to hang with LeBron and Luka on the back end, because we've seen what their teams look like when it's just one of those guys. But you put both of those processors together and you're trying to win a game 7 against this team. I just don't see that working out for Minnesota.
Obviously a big Gobert series as well, because Lakers are going to play small. On one hand, I'm like, Rui has shot well from 3 for 2 straight seasons. He's probably going to shoot well again. On the other hand, I don't know if he's the most reliable arm in that regard. And so can you steal more Gobert minutes if he isn't doing that? I would say it's unlikely, but at the very least they have that option. If Gobert can stick on the floor and be a factor, I do think that swings things with the Wolves. I think we talk all about a lot of teams that have popped over the second half. Clippers, first and foremost, the Pacers we've talked about. I think we've almost got lost in the shuffle that the Wolves have the 5th best net rating since January 1st. For a while, they have played really well. So this is going to be a close one. And frankly, I can't wait to watch it, because this is going to probably be the most thrilling back-to-back one that I can see on the board.
It is going to be close. And I kind of expected going into the playoffs that I was going to pick the Wolves to make a bit of a run, but this is a tough matchup for them. And you're right to point out the who guards Austin Reeves question is kind of looming in a way that we wouldn't have expected 2 months ago. I think Gobert is going to hang in this series better than he gets credit for.
It's going to be fine, man. I think the Rudy can't play. And he can't switch. He can't play. It's been overblown for a few years now. Even in that Clippers series that everybody ragged on him for, I'm like, guys, it wasn't Rudy Gobert.
Nope.
But can he do it on the offensive end? Is the other thing. Can he make the advantage download offensively? That's where he would want to pop there. That's where you have.
He's not going to score against the Lakers small lineups.
Probably
He's not.
That's the problem.
But I think he'll give enough overall to be a part of the series and to make some kind of impact on it. He's not going to be dead in the water. But 2 or 3 games in, are we going to say the same thing about Julius Randle if he's a disaster out there? And historically in the playoffs, he's kind of been a disaster out there when he's been healthy enough to play. If Mike Conley doesn't have a place to hide or to guard, are we going to say that about him, where it just feels untenable to have him out there for as many minutes as the Wolves might like? I'm not worried about Gobert in that respect. I'm more worried about some of the Wolves' other guys.
All right, last one. Nuggets versus Clippers. I'm going to go first. I have the Clippers in 6.
Nuggets in 7.
Nuggets in 6.
Okay. I'll be honest, I'm really worried for the Nuggets here because as we talked about earlier, I think there is a chance that Zoo can guard Jokic one-on-one. Not that he will take him out of the game or anything like that. Just the fact that you have freeing up all those other guys in order to hound the perimeter guards that the Nuggets have. The fact that you could throw on Dunn or Derrick Jones Jr. onto Murray. Like if Murray isn't healthy and he hasn't been for a couple of weeks now, he played 2 games, I believe, over the past couple of weeks. Like it's going to be tough to score against this team. This is one of the best defensive teams in the league. And then it's just like, where else are you going to? All of a sudden, you're turning more to rust than you want to. Is Aaron Gordon going to be healthy this entire series? The calf issue has plagued them this entire season. It's just like they're running out of options really quickly. And I appreciate what Jokic has done this season, one of the best seasons we have witnessed in our lifetime. I think he needs help, and I don't know where it's going to come from.
Yeah. Along those lines, I think Murray is the right kind of point to isolate here. And he can't just be good. Like he has to be overwhelming for them to have the kind of success in this series that they're aiming to, and to get past a really good Clippers team that now has just been really good for the majority of the season. Like they've just really put it together, and they are really going to challenge the Nuggets. Denver, on the other hand, doesn't have depth. They don't have a fail-safe defense. They have Nikola Jokic and whatever else they can scrounge up, and a lot of that's going to have to come down to Jamal Murray being really, really, really good against excellent on-ball pressure. So I am a Jamal Murray believer. I think that is going to happen. I think he's going to deliver in those moments in this series. I'm also my eye on Michael Porter, not just for the stakes related reasons we isolated earlier, but he had kind of a funny moment. I think it was like 2021 playoffs against Portland, where like Norm Powell was his kryptonite very briefly. It was like Michael Porter Jr. couldn't figure out how to score against smaller defenders. It was like a thing he needed to overcome and figure out how to do. And I think he kind of got there. But sometimes you've run into these series and you have to do it all over again. Because that's one of the Clippers questions is how do you match up with this team? Obviously, Zoo is going to guard Jokic, and Dunn presumably is going to chase Murray around. But what do you want to do with Kawhi? What do you want to do with Harden? What do you want to do with Norm? What do you want to do? Do you want to start Nicholas Batum? Like, how do you want to manage the variety of options that you have at your disposal? And I think Norm's ability to be physical with some bigger players sometimes works as a matchup advantage, to be honest with you.
Jokic going to take the matchup personally. If the Clips think they're going to let Zoo handle this guy on the island, he's going to put fouls on this Joker like you wouldn't even believe, bro. Just
he doesn't
watch.
Foul, though.
He doesn't.
It's like one a game.
He's going to foul Nikola Jokic. I promise you that.
They kind of can't handle it if he does foul, right? Like if you're getting into Batum and Ben Simmons minutes at the 5 really quickly, it's gonna get weird for the Clippers.
That's another thing. Is Zubac going to play 40 minutes a game?
He kind of has to.
I mean, he's going to play probably 35 at least.
Okay. His condition is way better than he used to be, by the way.
Totally.
Man, back in 2019, boy, he used to be sucking wind immediately.
Zeke Naji.
Back when Montrezl Harrell was the backup, dude. Like, the Nuggets backup situation is bad. It's still better than Ben Simmons.
That's probably going to be mostly Aaron
in the
Gordon.
Playoffs. I mean,
I actually think it's pretty similar. It's pretty comparable, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Clippers just do away with Simmons if Batum is available.
I don't think Simmons should play in this series, but Simmons. whichever team does survive, and I think this is going to be a bloodbath kind of series that takes a lot out of both of these teams. Congratulations, you get to play the Oklahoma City Thunder now. So it's tough sledding all the way through.
It's the playoffs, baby.
I wouldn't be surprised if Harden starts on Aaron Gordon just because of the
Good,
size
for sure.
matchup, just because of how girthy he is. But then that just puts more pressure on Brown to do more against someone like Paolo and whatnot.
Yep.
Those are going to be fascinating. I can't wait to see how they match up. All right. I think that's our playoff preview. That's an hour plus of content on top of our play-in reaction. So
this is a great field. Like I know the East is a little bit. We're trying to figure out what's going on in the middle, but
East is crap. But this is
West-wise.
West
I'm very
excellent.
excited. Yeah,
excellent.
So
Memphis, do your part, please, for the love of God. Oh my goodness.
Spare us from the Kings.
Jesus Christmas.
Quick schedule announcement. We are going to switch up our record dates just a little bit for the playoffs, or at least the start of the playoffs. We're going to do Saturday night first and foremost. So we'll be probably publishing that late Saturday, early Sunday.
Yeah.
Off of
and that's
the
in
first
place
wave
of the
games.
usual Monday show.
Yep. And then we'll be coming to you Wednesdays like we do this podcast you're listening to right now. So practically the same thing. So Saturday nights, Wednesday nights, but we'll be in your feed Sunday morning, Thursday morning at the very least. So check us out then. We'll be back this weekend then for our first round action. We will talk to you next time.